Hi, Megan. My name is Mike. Your parents and your friends want to have a conversation with you. And I'm here to help facilitate that dialogue. So why don't we start by sitting down and making ourselves comfortable? How would that be?
I saw Noah Bob the other day. I was trying to tune into that baseball game, and then the game went off, and CBS came on with the movie. Had two magnificent, handsome guys and a stupid old fellow in it. They were glorifying homosexuality.
Got a panel show?
No. Yeah, no, it's a movie.
No, that's a regular show. It's on every week. And usually it's just set in the guy's home. And it's usually just that guy who's a hard hat.
That's right. He's a hard
And he always just looks like a slob.
Looks like Jackie Gleason.
And then he has his hippie son-in-law.
Yeah.
And usually the general trend of it is to downgrade him and upgrade the square hard hat out to be bad.
What is it
called?
Arch is the guy's name.
So that's real family entertainment, isn't it?
The point of it is that, goddamn, I do not think that you glorify on public television homosexuality. You ever see what happened? You know what happened to the Greeks? Homosexuality destroyed them. Sure, Aristotle was a homo. We all know that. But with Socrates,
He never had the influence of television.
yeah. The last 6 Roman emperors were fags. You see, homosexuality, immorality generally, these are the enemies of strong societies. That's why the communists, the left-wingers, are pushing each other. They're trying to destroy us.
They love their kids very much and would do absolutely anything for their kids. That's really not what this is about. The point is, not only does God define marriage one way, He's the creator of all this, so He gets to define it, He always knows best. But the other point is that even amazing moms can't be a dad. Even amazing dads can't be a mom. And because the genders are different, because they complement one another, because they bring something unique to the table, even if 2 moms can be great moms, even if 2 dads can be great dads, they can't
When birds are on the wing.
But this is not characteristic of the homosexual in general.
And it's not causal, I gather.
No, it is not causal. As a matter of fact, there have been studies in which they tried to inject large doses of estrogenic hormone in male homosexuals, and they found that the effect was like a castrate. That is, the sexual drive was markedly diminished, but the object was not altered at all.
I see. Well, if we then dismiss, with some reservations, the constitutional factor, maybe I shouldn't say dismiss, say that it plays some minor role, and leave out hormonal effects, or say there is no causal relationship between hormones and the development of the pattern. We also say that it is not inherited necessarily. Then I suppose we come back to the psychological processes that you began to talk about before. And I wonder if we could elaborate on those, going back to the question of origin and cause. Why in one family does a child, if we tend to play down the congenital and the constitutional, why does one child become homosexual and in another family a child is not? What are specifically the factors?
Well, there again, I want to emphasize the child-parent relationship. Now, we're not saying that these parents cause homosexuality, but we are talking, and we want to emphasize this because we also want to mention prevention, of these certain attitudes. As I said before, a frightening or threatening or intimidating father may so frighten a child, a boy, let us say, that later on in life, he will be so frightened of any male figure that he will want to submit. He will want to be permissive, passive. He will want to not enter into any argument. And this passivity may result in homosexuality in order to neutralize or ward off this fantasied, threatening image of the father. Or, as I indicated to you before, that a mother who is dominant and aggressive and controlling and isolates this boy from all social activities, or at least activities with the same sex, may develop in this boy an identification with a mother as a female and a fantasy that he wants to be a female too, like the aggressive, dominant, controlling mother. So that these are many factors, and there are many combinations of these elements which enter into the final development of a homosexual expression.
You find these factors enter into your style?
I would emphasize other factors. Wearing inappropriate clothes, like these shoes, is a sure way to make yourself uncomfortable and conspicuous. But good grooming is more than clothes deep. Good grooming starts with personal care. This principally means the care of your hands, your hair, your teeth, and your skin. Let's begin with the skin by taking a look at it from the doctor's point of view.
He found out that I told that, and so as a preemptive move, he called my parents, called my mom specifically, because he really wanted to strike fear, and it worked. And when I came home, Dad took me into the bedroom and said, like, can you explain to me what's going on? And so I told him, I think I'm gay.
First of all, we took him to the doctor and had his hormones checked. You know, that's how naive we were. Then we called the largest Southern Baptist church in Memphis, and they said, oh, yes, you're so lucky. We have a unit right here in Memphis, and it's called Love in Action, and they have an 84% cure rate. And I'm thinking, wow, you know, I didn't even know what conversion therapy was.
We did one-on-one therapy sessions after I was outed for about 6 months. I went to a residential program. The main activity that we did was called a moral inventory, and we were asked to write down every sexual fantasy or experience we'd ever had, and we would have to say it in front of everyone, like share that with everyone in the group. And then after that, they would give me Bible verses to sort of combat those thoughts that I'd had. I knew that if I didn't do this, I would lose my family, my faith, perhaps, my community. By the end of the second week, I was asked to do this exercise, asking me to imagine my father sitting there and basically say that I hated him. And I remember thinking to myself, these are Christians who are saying that in order to be cured, I have to hate someone, not love someone. And Christ is all about love. How much were you paying?
It was like
They made out like there was a sex ring.
Melvin Durr was shocked by the life sentence. He was a popular character on and off the stage. He directed or acted in numerous plays for the Boise Little Theater. He shared his story in a 1973 audio recording.
I knew other gay people in Boise, friends that I'd known all my life since I was in high school and junior high school. Actually, the life there was rather restricted as far as gay life was concerned. There was a lot more gay life going on in Boise than I
officials say
thought,
as many as 1 million Americans may have been infected with the AIDS virus, and more than 12,000 are expected to develop the deadly disease next year. Now, that would double the number of cases since 1981 nationwide. Here at home, the dramatic hearings concerning a child with AIDS attending school in Queens continue. The protests seem to be quieting down, but there was a lot of confusion today about a surprising statement by the child's lawyer yesterday.
A mystery disease known as the gay plague has become an epidemic unprecedented in the history of American assume that my client has AIDS. We'll come to that later.
Again today, there was more doubt cast as to whether or not the plaintiff in this case has AIDS. On the witness stand, Dr. Ari Rubenstein, a renowned figure in AIDS treatment, who said he knew of no child with AIDS who had ever shown improvement after being diagnosed. This seems to contradict the findings of the city's special panel, which allowed
7 years ago this month, the 32-year-old Argentina-born doctor was an extern at Kings County Hospital and was stuck by an AIDS-infected needle she says was left behind by another doctor following a test on an AIDS patient.
You're going to hear how a needle was left in the
To these parents who hold vigils here every day, the question is not about one AIDS child anymore, though, but about the future. A group called Parent Federation representing that very issue of whether or not the disease is communicable and whether or not the child who has it should be isolated. From Queens Supreme Court, I'm Barbara Laskin, Channel 5 News.
They say evidently it stops the advancement of the AIDS virus in patients in the early stages of the disease. When the patients stop receiving the drug, they revert to their previous condition.
Those tests now for repeated 20 weeks after therapy was stopped, which was only 2 weeks, they had reverted back to their pre-treatment levels, again suggesting that
it was back in April that the Greater New York Blood Program began testing all donated blood with a special screening test for the AIDS
Ribavirin is not available to the public. It is one of several drugs approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration for testing for effectiveness in fighting the AIDS virus. The AIDS virus in its most virulent form destroys the body's immune system. New York hospital researchers say in addition to the positive preliminary results, ribavirin has the advantage of being orally administered, while others like HPA-23 are only useful when injected. The potentially harmful side to ribavirin is that
all of this and the possibility that the person might transmit this to someone else in the interim.
First, you must understand
by not knowing that they have it,
this
and therefore
test is not a test
the
for
health
AIDS,
of others.
it's a test for the Obviously, we have day, this is valued today, or realize that
And sometimes there were more serious illnesses. Finally, as Ernie was recovering from this one, the doctor suggested a 3-point program for health. Sleep, regular rest, right eating, a sound, balanced diet, and exercise. When Ernie felt stronger. Ernie's instructor gave him the cues. Don't overtire. And while Ernie built himself up for the time when he could actually play basketball, he was learning the skills of the game. As time passed and Ernie grew stronger, he increased his daily quota of activity. And it's important that it be regular. And Ernie tried some exercises to supplement his sports program. Here's one to build a basic abdominal muscle. It wasn't long before Ernie began to feel the benefits of his regular exercise. A little exercise every day. Here's a front stretching exercise to strengthen the nut muscles. See how the hips act as a pivot. Ernie still has a cold now and then, but now that he's stronger, he can shake off illnesses more readily. Ernie found that he could build good health and enjoy it. And certainly everyone here has sound health. Exercise builds good health. What about Jean Taylor? What's her story? We've remarked on Jean's poise and self-confidence, but not so long ago, Jean felt lethargic and awkward, and feeling awkward. Well, let's see what happens. Yes, Jean was pretty shy. Jean wondered if she could do something to make friends easier. A couple of days later, she was still wondering. And then she saw one way other people make friends. That's right, engage in sports. But no, Jean wouldn't dare. She'd be so clumsy and awkward. But the point is, of course, that you have to learn how to play. Jean thought she might try it. Maybe once she learned the skills of the game, she would gain poise and self-confidence. So Gene finally took the big first step and got started with some physical activity.
To the southwest, for many and many a mile, lie the wide regions of Blackfeet and the mountain Assiniboines. And into these regions I am about to push my way. It is the birthplace of waters which seek in 4 mighty streams the 4 distant oceans: the Polar Sea, the Atlantic, the Gulf of Mexico, and the Pacific. William Francis Butler, Surveyor, 1870. From our point of view, the mountains seem to stand solitary from each other, each a separate event. In fact, they were once a continuous ridge of limestone, but then the winds abraded this ridge. Rivers cut gaps, and the valley glaciers split open the flanks of the ridge and carved it up. Even where the ice did not reach, up at the peaks, the intense cold shattered the rock and stripped the peaks to their spines.